For more than 50 years, Adrienne Barbeau stayed quiet. She worked beside some of the biggest names in Hollywood and never said a bad word about them in public. But at 80, something changed. In a recent interview, she finally opened up about a man she once shared the screen with. A man that millions of fans adored. What she said was not kind. She admitted she could barely stand being near him. Why did she wait this long to speak? And what happened on those sets that she kept hidden for decades? The answer goes deeper than fans expected. Adrienne Jo Barbeau was born on June 11, 1945, in Sacramento, California. She grew up far from the bright centers of New York and Hollywood, with no clear road into show business, yet those early years gave her a strong edge and a personality that never felt easy to fit into one box. By 1963, when she was only 17, Barbeau had already stepped into professional performance. She began with the San Jose Civic Light Opera, and from there she joined a traveling musical comedy revue that toured U.S. Army bases across Southeast Asia. The setting was far from glamorous. These were tense years, and the soldiers she performed for were living through the pressure of a dangerous geopolitical moment. She earned only $7 a day, which says a lot about how hard the work was and how little comfort came with it. While many girls her age were finishing school and thinking about prom, Barbeau was performing night after night in remote military outposts, learning how to hold an audience through pure nerve, timing, and presence. That rough start gave her something polished training could never fully teach. A couple of years later, in 1965, she moved to New York City, and that move changed everything. She landed her first Broadway job in Fiddler on the Roof, playing Hodel, Tevye's second daughter. She did not arrive with a powerful agent clearing the way. She worked her way in as a replacement cast member and kept moving through different productions, including an off-Broadway run and a touring company. Around her were other rising performers, including a young Bette Midler, who was also still building her future. For a young woman from Sacramento who had come to New York with ambition and very little else, stepping into one of the most competitive stages in the world was a serious achievement. Then came the break that gave her a role people still connect with her name. In 1971, Grease held its casting call, and Barbeau showed up without an agent. She walked into an open call as an unknown. Director Tom Moore had a simple way of testing people. He asked actors which bands from the 1950s they loved, not because he needed a perfect answer, but because he wanted to hear something honest. Barbeau answered, Johnny and Joe and the Drifters. Moore later admitted that he barely knew those acts himself. What mattered was that she sounded real. She kept getting called back, and each round brought her closer. She sang Over the Mountain and Love Potion No. 9. And from that process, she built the role of Betty Rizzo almost from scratch. The result changed her career. Her performance earned her a 1972 Tony Award nomination for Best Supporting Actress in a Musical, along with a Theatre World Award. That success opened a door, though the way it opened said a lot about the business she was entering. Norman Lear, already one of the most powerful television producers in Hollywood, noticed her after Grease and personally called her in to audition for his new CBS sitcom, Maude. She was cast as Carol Traynor, the daughter of B. Arthur's title character, and she stayed in that role from 1972 to 1978, across the show's full 6-season run. For many actors, that would have felt like total arrival. For Barbeau, it was more complicated. Hollywood responded fast, but the attention came with a narrow view. Studios kept seeing her as a sex symbol before they saw her as an actress, even though she had already proven herself on Broadway. Maude itself was unlike most primetime television of the period. It premiered on CBS on September 12, 1972, and immediately stood apart. Norman Lear had already changed television with All in the Family, and Maude carried that same boldness into subjects many networks preferred to avoid. The show dealt with abortion, alcoholism, menopause, and feminist politics, at a time when much of television still wanted safe material and soft edges. That courage became impossible to ignore when the two-part episode Maude's Dilemma aired on November 14th and November 21st, 1972. In those episodes, Maude, a 47-year-old grandmother, decides to get an abortion. That had never happened before with a lead character in American primetime. It also came just 2 months before Roe v. Wade was decided, which made the storyline feel even more explosive. After the first broadcast, CBS received nearly 7,000 protest letters. When the episodes were repeated in August 1973, the backlash grew much bigger. More than 17,000 letters arrived, 39 affiliates refused to air the rerun, and every sponsor pulled out, including Pepsi and General Mills. CBS still aired it. No sponsor paid for the commercial time, yet the network ran it anyway. Inside that show, Barbeau found one of the most important creative relationships of her life. She worked with B. Arthur for 6 full seasons, and the lessons stayed with her long after the series ended. In a 2026 interview with The Hollywood Times, Barbeau described Arthur as someone who was always the first one out of her chair at a table read to greet new actors. She said what mattered most to Arthur was the success of the show, not her own spotlight. Barbeau has also said that she learned a great deal about comedy from Arthur, whose professional discipline went back to the 1950s. That mattered because the bond between Maude and Carol gave the series its emotional center. Viewers did not just follow the politics, they followed people they cared about. For Barbeau, fresh off a Tony-nominated run in Grease, that was a masterclass in how television could carry weight without losing warmth. Her personal life during those years also pulled her into one of Hollywood's stranger chapters. In the early to mid-1970s, around the second season of Maude, Barbeau began dating Burt Reynolds. At the time, Reynolds was one of the most powerful stars in America. His 1972 Cosmopolitan centerfold had made him a huge cultural figure, and films like Deliverance and later Smokey and The Bandit pushed him to the very top of the box office. There was also an eerie detail attached to the relationship before it even began. Barbeau has said that a psychic once told her she would date a man lying on a bearskin rug. Later, Reynolds became famous for exactly that image in his Cosmopolitan centerfold. She confirmed in a 2026 podcast interview that the prediction came true in a way she had not expected. It sounds almost too strange to believe, yet it became part of her real life. The relationship itself ended badly. In her memoir, Barbeau revealed that Reynolds broke up with her by letter and then had a friend call afterward. She also wrote that he was stringing her along while abusing pills, a reference to his widely known dependence on Percodan during that period. One story she shared captures the chaos of that world with painful clarity. She was staying at his house while he was away on location, and in the middle of the night, 2 unknown women walked into his kitchen looking for him. In that moment, she said, she fully understood the kind of life that surrounded him. Years later, she worked with him again on Cannonball Run in 1981. She described that experience as not her favorite, though not because of Reynolds himself. She felt like the only person there trying to truly act, while much of the set moved in a looser, more careless mood. That detail says a lot about her. Even inside celebrity chaos, she kept reaching for real work. Soon, another major relationship would shape both her life and her career. Barbeau met John Carpenter on the set of his 1978 NBC thriller, Someone's Watching Me, which he wrote and directed. She played Sophie, and the first scene she filmed was one where the character reveals she is gay. After the take, Carpenter walked over and gave her a note she never forgot. "That was great. Let's do it again and do less." Those words stayed with her for decades. The respect between them formed quickly, and so did the romance. On January 1st, 1979, they were married in a private ceremony at Carpenter's residence in Bowling Green, Kentucky. For two rising Hollywood figures, it was a quiet beginning, far from the glare people might have expected. That marriage led directly into Barbeau's first theatrical film role. In The Fog, released in 1980, she played Stevie Wayne, a late-night radio DJ broadcasting from a lighthouse while supernatural terror moved in with the coastal mist. The part gave her a strong screen presence, yet much of the performance depended on her holding attention largely on her own, talking into a microphone in isolation. Carpenter later decided the film needed more tension and paid for extra reshoots himself. The effort worked. Released in February 1980, The Fog earned over $21 million on a budget of roughly $1 million, and Barbeau became a major genre presence almost overnight. Even then, the old problem returned in a different form. People wondered whether she had the role because she was talented or because she was Carpenter's wife. That question followed her into several collaborations, including Someone's Watching Me, The Fog, Escape from New York, and even The Thing, where she voiced the chess computer without credit. Barbeau did not hide from the complexity of that period. In her memoir, she faced it directly and admitted that the question was emotionally difficult. The public version of the marriage looked exciting, but private life had real strain. Then, in 1982, George A. Romero cast her in Creepshow as Wilma Billy Northrup in The Crate. It was a nasty, vivid part, and Barbeau played it with such fierce comic energy that audiences responded instantly. The film, written by Stephen King, earned $21 million domestically on an $8 million budget after opening on November 12, 1982. That same year, she also starred in Wes Craven's Swamp Thing. Production had started as early as April 27, 1981, and Barbeau performed many scenes in actual swamp water under the southern heat. Her character, Alice Cable, was built from two characters in the original DC Comics material, which gave the role more shape than a standard genre heroine usually received. The visual impact lasted. Images of her moving through those blackwater swamps became some of the most repeated photos of her career. Between 1980 and 1982, that placed her inside a rare cluster of horror history that no other actress matched in quite the same way. Then, in 1986, she appeared in Back to School as Vanessa, Rodney Dangerfield's ex-wife. The film opened on June 13, 1986, and earned about $91.2 million worldwide on an $11 million budget. It was one of her biggest commercial hits and showed that she could handle sharp comedy. Yet even with that success, the industry still kept her inside the genre box it had built for her years earlier. By September 1984, Adrienne Barbeau and John Carpenter's marriage had come to an end. They had married in 1979, the same year she appeared in his TV movie, Someone's Watching Me, and the timing of the breakup carried real weight. During the years leading up to it, Barbeau had appeared in 4 Carpenter projects between 1978 and 1982. After the marriage ended, she never appeared in another one. What made it even more striking was how quiet the divorce was. There was no loud tabloid circus, no public blow-up, no headline war. Still, beneath that silence, something major had shifted. The end of the marriage also marked the end of one important chapter of her career. One of the smartest turns came through voice acting. In 1992, she became Catwoman in Batman, the animated series, and that role introduced her to a whole new audience. It had nothing to do with John Carpenter, and that mattered. It gave her a space where her talent stood on its own. That reinvention had actually begun earlier, not on screen, but on stage. After the 1984 divorce, Barbeau moved back toward the place where she had first built her craft. Across the late 1980s and early 1990s, she performed in more than 25 stage productions in the United States and Canada. It was demanding work, with long tours and a pace many younger actors would have avoided. For her, it was not a sentimental return to the past. It was a clear statement about who she was. Long before Hollywood had labeled her a scream queen, she had been a stage actress with real training and serious range. She had earned a Tony nomination in 1972 for Grease, and now she was reminding the industry that the foundation had always been there. That return to live performance also opened the way to another important relationship. In 1991, Barbeau appeared in the West Coast premiere of Billy Van Zant's comedy Drop Dead, and the production changed her life in more ways than one. During that run, the two fell in love. Then, on December 31, 1992, they got married on New Year's Eve. The date gave the moment a kind of natural dramatic finish, as though one long stretch of pain had finally reached a softer ending. It came 8 years after her divorce from Carpenter, and this new marriage brought more than companionship. It also brought a partner who valued her as a performer and creative equal. That same year gave her one of the most iconic roles of her second act. When Batman, the animated series, premiered on September 5, 1992, millions of viewers met her first through her voice. As Catwoman, Barbeau gave Selina Kyle a low, controlled, unforgettable sound that helped define the character for a generation. She would return to the role in other Batman animated projects through 2000, and the performance became one of the most loved in DC animation. It also opened a new lane that kept growing. Later on, she voiced characters in God of War, Halo 4, and Fallout 76. By that point, it was clear that her voice alone could carry an entire second career. There was even more to her range than many people realized. Her own biography has made a point of describing her not only as an actress and author, but also as a recording artist. In 1998, she released a self-titled folk album, showing a side of her talent that film and television had rarely used. That musical side had been there for decades. Her performance career began in 1963 with the San Jose Civic Light Opera, and after high school she spent 2 years touring military bases in Southeast Asia in a musical comedy revue. So the deeper story of Barbeau's career was never narrow. She could sing, she could dance, she could act, and she had been doing all of it long before Hollywood decided how it wanted to frame her. Then, years later, life surprised her again in a way that made national headlines. On March 17, 1997, St. Patrick's Day, Adrienne Barbeau gave birth to identical twin boys, Walker Stephen and William Dalton Van Zant, at age 51. That fact alone drew attention, but the numbers behind it made it even more remarkable. According to the New York Post, she was one of only 144 American women over 50 who had babies that year. She and Billy Van Zant had spent 5 years trying to conceive and had gone through failed fertility treatments before the pregnancy happened naturally. Barbeau later joked that she was the only woman in the maternity ward who was also a member of AARP, and the line caught on because it held both humor and disbelief at once. Even though she never tried to turn herself into a symbol of late motherhood, the public did it for her. By the time her memoir came out in 2006, that image had already stuck. The publisher even noted that she had never intended to become the poster woman for mothers over 50, yet both of her pregnancies were part of her public story. She was also careful not to turn her experience into a fantasy for others. Her advice was clear. If a woman was delaying children because she assumed it could be done easily at 50, Barbeau said not to postpone. She and Billy had been the exception. Her second marriage also lasted a long time. Barbeau and Billy Van Zandt stayed together for 25 years before the relationship ended. They had married on New Year's Eve in 1992 after meeting through Drop Dead. In August 1991, and then in 2018, when Barbeau was 72, she filed for divorce. The split was confirmed through court records. Once again, the ending happened with very little noise around it. There were no big public statements, no dramatic interviews, no visible campaign to control the story. There was simply a filing, and then the close of another chapter. That silence was especially striking because Barbeau had spent years building a public image shaped by candor, wit, and emotional honesty. She had never seemed afraid of speaking directly. So when this divorce passed with almost no explanation, the absence of words carried its own meaning. Some accounts even noted that after the split, she and Van Zandt still described themselves as best friends who saw each other often. That detail gave the whole situation a strange softness on the surface, even while the legal reality said something had ended. She chose not to explain the gap between those two versions, and in that choice, there was a privacy she clearly wanted to protect. What remained constant was her refusal to shrink. In 2015, when she was about 69 or 70, Barbeau spent much of the year on the national tour of the Broadway revival of Pippin, playing Bertha, Pippin's grandmother. Night after night, she climbed a trapeze 15 feet in the air, hung upside down, and sang No Time at All, live for the audience, with no safety net below her. She had once sung upside down early in her career in an off-Broadway production, but this was something else entirely. This was a full trapeze, a national tour, and a woman pushing far past what anyone expected her age to look like on stage. Local television crews in cities like Detroit captured it, and the message was impossible to miss. She was still daring, still working, still fully present. That spirit helps explain why her memoir hit so hard when it turned toward the way Hollywood had treated her. One of its sharpest chapters is called The Sex Symbol, and the title is loaded with frustration rather than pride. Published in 2006 by Carolyn Graff, the 345-page book lays out how often men in the industry reduced her to her body instead of her talent. At one point, Barbeau wrote, "I'm a short woman with a pretty good body and large breasts. That's not what I think of as sexy." The line lands because it is not fishing for praise and not asking for sympathy. It is a clear statement from someone who knew exactly how she had been marketed and exactly what had been missed. The deeper problem, as her memoir makes plain, was never just one man. It was a whole system. Producers and executives kept making decisions based on how willing she was to be photographed or presented in a certain way, while the fuller range of her ability sat underused. She even included a chapter called The Sex Symbol in Action, or Lack Thereof, which makes the point with painful clarity. By then, she had already earned a Tony nomination for Grease in 1972. She had credentials, training, and stage power. Still, too many people in Hollywood preferred to sell an image instead of supporting a performer. That same pattern followed her into the years when she was married to John Carpenter. The industry quickly began flattening her identity into the simpler label of Carpenter's wife. That hurt because it erased everything that had already existed before the marriage began. She and Carpenter married on January 1st, 1979, at his home in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Within 2 years, she was in the fog and escape from New York, and the public story around her narrowed fast. Yet her Broadway success, including the Tony nomination and Theatre World Award for Grease in 1972, had come long before that relationship. Even after they divorced on September 14, 1984, the label lingered. What often got lost in the retelling was how much she had built by herself before Hollywood ever folded her into someone else's story. She originated Betty Rizzo in Greece when it opened at the Eden Theater on February 14, 1972. She played the role during the first 5 months of what became a huge Broadway run with more than 3,000 performances. That same year, she was nominated for a Tony for Best Featured Actress in a Musical. None of that came through marriage or studio help. She had worked for it. Earlier, from 1964 to 1967, she had even worked as a go-go dancer in a mafia-run New York nightclub while fighting her way toward a break. So when later narratives tried to treat her as an extension of a husband's career, they were leaving out a whole foundation of grit and ambition. In 2022, she answered that erasure in a quiet but meaningful way. To mark the 50th anniversary of Broadway Grease, Barbeau co-edited Grease. Tell Me More. Tell Me More. Stories from the Broadway phenomenon that started it all, published by Chicago Review Press on June 7, 2022. Part of the proceeds went to the Actors Fund. The book collected first-hand stories from the original cast and crew, and her place as co-editor mattered. It was a way of reclaiming her connection to Betty Rizzo and to the early-stage history that many people forgot once the 1978 film turned the property into a worldwide pop culture landmark. She had helped create that legacy, and now she was shaping how it would be remembered. Even into her late 70s, the work kept coming. Adrienne Barbeau, born June 11, 1945, turned 79 in 2024, and instead of fading from view, she stepped into a recurring role on a major streaming thriller. In Harlan Coben's Shelter, which premiered on Amazon Prime Video on August 18, 2023, she played Ellen Bolitar, Mickey's perceptive and emotionally layered grandmother. The role carried real substance, with grief, intelligence, and tension built into the character. The project had been cast in September 2022, which means she was actively chosen for it at a stage in life when Hollywood often sidelines women decades younger than she was. That fact alone says a great deal about how much force she still brings on screen. She also continued working in horror and animation. Her official website noted that she had completed a thriller for Tubi, which turned out to be Hellblazers, a genre film featuring Tony Todd, Bruce Dern, Billy Zane, and Meg Foster. Then came another major voice role. She was cast as Sally Jupiter, the original Silk Spectre, in Watchmen Chapter 1, a new Warner Brothers animated film released on August 13, 2024, with a digital release on August 27th. More than 30 years after becoming Catwoman in Batman, the animated series, Warner Brothers brought her back into the world of DC-related storytelling again. That return felt earned. Some voices stay with audiences, and hers clearly did. Then there were the public moments that reminded everyone she still knew how to command attention without even trying very hard. On December 7, 2024, she was photographed at Los Angeles Airport, wearing an off-white chevron-patterned sweater, fitted jeans, red cowboy boots, stylish glasses, and a short, blown-out brown hairstyle. The photos spread fast. Fox News praised her for looking fabulous at 79, and other entertainment outlets followed. A few months later, in April 2025, she appeared again in Hollywood, this time in a leopard print jacket, white blouse, and black leather pants while supporting John Carpenter at his Hollywood Walk of Fame ceremony. 2 appearances in less than 5 months created the same impression. She had presence, ease, and the kind of confidence that does not need to announce itself.